him and one of my professors were just like looking at my work and reading my artist statement, and I audibly hear him say, "Oh, that's bullshit." It's actually Red Rocks in other parts of the country. We got some in Manchester too, believe it or not, right next to Raising Cane's. I wish ours looked more like this. It's not the last roll of film ever, but in my head, that's what I was thinking the whole time. Chasing after new relationships or like new equipment or new anything. And the ones that are always there are like, what do you need anything else for? You know?
Zach, welcome to What on Earth is Going On. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, man, this is great. This is such a nice studio. Got the lights coming in hot. Great backdrop. I need to get a backdrop this color. I just have white.
Yes. It is the debut of the new setup, the new
right.
Same backdrop, just different setup.
Yeah, same but different.
Couldn't have a better person to do it with. You are the most technically gifted photographer, videographer. But with this project, it also comes, I'm sure, with a lot of pressure of using a disposable camera when you're used to using some of the best equipment that the industry has to offer.
Yeah, I get in a way. I mean, I feel like saying I shot film in the past is a little bit different than just like the disposable camera because it's meant to be kind of like foolproof, but I usually find a way to mess it up somehow. Trial and error, you know? But yeah, I remember when you gave it to me, you were like, "Oh, no pressure, but you're the only photographer that's doing this." And I was like, "What? Okay, no, that should be fine." And then I found myself overthinking it constantly. Like there were days where I would just look at it and I would like grab a different camera, like my digital camera or like maybe my 35 millimeter if I felt like it. And I wouldn't even take the disposable camera because I was like, this is high pressure. I don't want to do this. I don't want to waste a shot, you know? And I think I've become so spoiled with like digital, right? Like it's so rapid fire and shoot first, ask questions later. Which film is always like ask questions first, shoot it, like make sure that it's worth it what you're doing, right? But also too, it's not the end of the world. It's not the last roll of film ever. But in my head, that's what I was thinking the whole time. This is all right. This is it. This is the last 26 or 27 photos I got, and hopefully they're somewhat decent.
Photo number one, my friend.
I knew this was going to be one of them instantly.
That was the very first photo in your roll, and I immediately knew who did it because I noticed right away your shooting style, which, especially when it comes to streetscapes, to cities, to the everyday city life, you love lines, you love that structure, you love those moments that millions of people might walk by every day and not notice. You take that quick second to stop and notice them.
Yeah, I think it's because you also know like what a camera will do to an image, right? You're making a three-dimensional space, a two-dimensional space, so you already are thinking about how it flattens things. And back in like college, we talked about how this was like this idea of like challenging the photographic plane. So you're taking a flat surface and now you're adding this like depth to it. Most people will look at this and be like, "Oh, it's a sidewalk and a wall," you know. But I don't know, like kind of like zoning out on these spaces and like looking at form and like those like receding lines of like the bricks of the sidewalk with like this, counteracting shadow, but also the traffic like sign. I don't know, this was like a style I got big into like my senior year, of just these. We called it was spatial recognition was like the the original like portfolio and idea, and that was a bit more abstract. Like those photos, you would look at them and you wouldn't really know what it was off bat. And then like as I started shooting more and more, I just came up with like the urban urban landscapes or like urban spaces, where it was more like identifiable spots but similar theme of depth.
How do you choose when there's so much going on in the city? People are moving around 24/7. How do you take that second to say, this is the scene that I want to capture? These are the lines that are speaking the most.
I mean, I'm instantly like looking at like those like outside lines of like buildings and like how they like intersect with each other. So I usually just start by looking up, and I think that's just like that grandiose feel of like being belittled almost, like in like a mountain landscape out in either the woods or in Colorado or like in Nevada. Just like seeing something that large, it's like, whoa, like where do you start? So start looking up and then kind of work your way down. This, I noticed the shadow, right? And I feel like I'm always looking down when I walk, which is not a good move. You should be looking like, a little more forward, a little more like up, but I'm just always and so yeah, I just kind of followed that shadow, and then now I'm sitting there with like this like little plastic camera, like is this even in like right in frame?
And you touched upon a fantastic segue into photo number 2.
It's so funny. These are like, I was thinking about all of like these. This is a Red Rocks National Canyon Reserve. It's like a lot of words. It's not just Red Rocks. People are like, oh, Colorado. It's like, no, it's actually Red Rocks in other parts of the country. We got some in Manchester too, believe it or not, right next to Raising Cane's, in the movie theater in Texas Roadhouse. We got these lovely. I wish ours looked more like this.
You take a ton of cityscape, sharp lines, the sidewalks, the street. I wanted to know how your approach differs when you are out in nature.
Yeah, because there's so many more just natural, crazy. It's not as like cut and dry, right? So it's hard to know like where to start. I think it's like I want there to be some level of depth, like having this foreground, like this rock formation in the foreground, and then you see beyond that, like the hill with cactuses and everything, which had the luxury of stepping on one. Not when I took this, but later that day. And then more like mountain range, and then beyond that, you even see more mountain. So again, it's kind of like, you're taking this, again, 3-dimensional space, making it 2-dimensional. So like, how can you portray that level of depth in a, image? So I think that's like the big thing with like landscape. And just trying to get the most out of it, right? Like there's all these like waves and textures in these rocks in the foreground and in person, right? A lot of red with like the contrast of the blue sky is like really cool. So it's just trying to like get all those colors and like all those formations into one shot. And yeah, that was one of the first times I felt like almost overwhelmed because there was just so much. It was a 17-mile loop. And we're lucky enough to have just like super clear sky day, which in most cases I wouldn't like, like a nice cloudy day for portraits and everything is great, as you know. But for this, like the level of contrast coming in on the rocks and everything was just constantly changing. So I could take a photo and then 10 minutes later it looks different. And meanwhile, I'm thinking, whoa, there's so many other spots in this area that like we haven't even seen yet. And so that was, again, like an overwhelming but exciting experience.
Photo 3, we're bringing it back home.
Wow. All right. Yeah, we're going to need a longer podcast.
For anyone that doesn't know, can you give them a quick overview of what this place is? And then can you follow up with the lessons that you've learned here through working there for so long?
Wow, so loaded. So Farr's Sporting Goods. My grandpa started that in this location in 1971 when they had redeveloped Main Street in Manchester. It was one of like the first buildings built. Prior to that, it was Manchester Surplus, like 1955 or 56, up until this was built. And so Farr's, yeah, I like grew up going there. We never had like babysitters or anything, I was always just there with my mom and like always surrounded, just in the bike shop there, just watching and hanging out. And that's where I got my first job. I worked there for like up until like last year, so like 17 years or 16 years, something like that. And yeah, it's funny. It's like holding this photo. I've seen so many photos over the years, right? Because fortunately, my grandpa and like other family members like took photos of the store every now and again, like when it was first built or just over the years. And there's actually so many photos that are like just kind of like this. But for me to be like, oh, this one's mine, is kind of like cool. And of course, unfortunately, we're now, after all these years, kind of just hanging up the hat, and closing. So I look at this and I'm like, oh, this is a photo in the style that I've seen decades ago, but like showing today, which is something that, no one else would know when they see that. Unless, of course, they look and they see like that 75% off sign and, based on how deep you look into images, right? But yeah, I don't know. I was just there and I was like, I need to get a photo of this again in the style of like that disposable camera that was probably used in some of these other photos that I've seen. And it's always been kind of like an ongoing project. When I was in college, I did like the 4x5 and did like a series on FARs, and it was just like portraits of like my family and the business, and just like some of the oddities that have just been around for so long in there. And so I'm working on now, like bringing in like found photos and photos that I've taken and merging them into like a new series of FARs, especially like paying homage, right? And I think that's just kind of thinking about how your perception of photos changes over time. Like there was a point in time where it's just like, oh yeah, it's FARs, But now to be like, oh wow, like that's not gonna be there, It's definitely, more of like a sentimental side, but I think that can apply to like anyone that looks at photos of like a past, which I think is, important. I think you kind of lose that in the digital age, right? It's so instantaneous, and so I got to post this, I got to put it up the day after, the day I take it. But I think looking back on it is probably when it becomes like the most powerful.
I don't have as much of a question for the fourth photo. I am here to see your initial reaction and then just to pick your mind on this moment, where you were, what appeals to you, and maybe your own read on the photo that you took.
I went with my friend Sergio to sell this U-Haul van full of Pokemon cards to New York City. So that's what I was driving when I took this. And we were driving in, I think, the Bronx, maybe? But I kept seeing the primary colors pop up, which is red, yellow, and blue. So I started just taking photos, mostly with my phone, of just the primary colors when they would pop up. And like just this day alone, there was multiple, and I was like, oh, this one's cool because it's got the tires. Granted, they're car tires, but also maybe a subconscious relation to like FARs and like the constant changing of tires. But yeah, the blue auto body sign, the red door, like red doors that are kind of framing the tires, the yellow of the overhang of the store next to it. I'm thinking that was kind of like my, like what made me want to take the image initially. I remember being on like the highway and there was like a school bus and there was like an IKEA and like another building. So you had the yellow of that, the blue of the IKEA, and then there was like a red other building next to it. And I don't know, like just something about those colors, right? These three colors that make up all the colors that we see being just so like blunt. Of course, film washes it out a little bit and gives it its own style. But yeah, it's that was definitely the purpose of that.
Photo number 5. Yeah, so I would love the context of you taking this photo, and then I would also like for you to dive into that quote and what spoke so vividly to you about invest in those who stay.
Yeah, so I think on this roll of film on this camera, there's a few photos that show like my feet and like looking down at the ground. And I don't think it's like any groundbreaking style, but I think that idea of like, oh, I'm here in this moment, look, and like this is just what I'm on and here's where I'm at. I like that perspective. Invest love in the ones who stay. Yeah. Or who's the artist that did that? Poetry, what? Poetry something? They were like all over like that area of Boston, and I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on where it was, but it was near like the Brighton Music Hall. It was more like on the outskirts. And yeah, I think it's just like going through it probably at that point in time, right? Just relationship wise. And of course, now I have a different vision on like all of that than like when I took that, right? Like I think I come from a place of like understanding more now than when I took this. But I think that idea of like not even just in relationships, but like just anything in life, like chasing something, like sometimes isn't entirely worth it, and to just like embrace those moments, right? Like I was probably here really excited to be seeing this band, right? Like with my friend, but also like in this kind of state of just like, man, life could be a little bit better right now. So it's kind of like a wake up call, like in that moment. And this artist doing having the exact impact that he wanted to in like spray painting this on the ground. It's kind of like this like big like full circle moment. Same deal. This might have been like one of like 3 photos that I actually used the in-camera flash on, and I was like, oh, this might be cool to get like a vignette around, like again, like having like this pre-visualization of what I'm wanting it to look like. Yeah, invest love in the ones who stay. And I think, yeah, that's like super important. Like, I don't know, it's like the ones who stay are the ones you think about the least sometimes, which isn't like the best thing to say, but it's like, again, you're always chasing after new relationships or like new equipment or new anything, but it's like old faithful, and the ones that are always there are like what do you need anything else for, you know? So yeah, I really like this photo. This is one that I would like just personally want like framed somewhere in my room or house or something. Yeah. I think I have like a little bit of like emotional scarring talking about that, because I had read this book in college. It was like Towards a Philosophy of Photography by like Willem Flusser, probably butchered his name. But he had talked about how a black and white image is like a more theoretical image than a color image, saying like if you look at an image of a red barn and the barn is red, you're instantly like, oh, that's a red barn. But if you look at a black and white image of a barn, then you don't have this like this preconceived notion of like what you're looking at. You're now looking at like form and light and just like shadows and highlights. You're not being, persuaded by any color or any experience. And I had a critique, and I had like talked about that in like my artist statement, and we like went on lunch break and we came back, and it was with this guy named Andy Grunberg, who is the New York Times art critic. Like he's like this like big name. And I came in after lunch, and him and one of my professors were just like looking at my work and reading my artist statement, and I audibly hear him say, "Oh, that's bullshit." You're gonna have to figure out how to work with swears in your podcast. But he literally said that, and I was like, oh, okay, here we go, senior in college, this is all I've been doing, here's this huge name, and he's calling my work that, and this is gonna, So sometimes talking about it, I'm like, am I just out of my mind? I might be out of my mind.